Okay, it's 7:02. Let's get started. Could we have a roll call?
Bill Brown,
Here.
Annie Adams,
She's in the hallway. It's on her way, on her way.
Leonardo Kovis, Kara Dudek. Here. Cynthia Hoyle.
Here.
Audrey Ishii. Susan Jones.
Here.
Jeff Marino.
Here.
Craig Schonkweiler.
Here.
Nancy Westcott.
Here.
Morgan White. Here. We have a quorum.
Okay, thank you. And I forgot to mention, this is the October meeting of the Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Commission. Make sure you're in the right place. Okay. Approval of the agenda. Is there a motion to approve the agenda?
I move to approve the agenda.
Moved by Sue.
Seconded.
Seconded by Jeff. Any discussion or additions? Subtractions?
No,
this
no,
is
agenda.
This is agenda. Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, agenda's been approved. Now the minutes. Is there a motion to approve the minutes?
There were 2 changes in the minutes, and I passed them the corrections out. The corrections are highlighted.
I move to approve the updated, amended, is that what there are? Corrected minutes?
Okay, moved by Morgan. Is there a second? Seconded by Cynthia. Any discussion or further corrections? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries. Minutes are approved. Thank you. Public input. I have one card. Kelly Wigging.
Last week there was an accident on Prospect.
Move the microphone just a little bit more. Yeah.
Sorry. Last week there was an accident on Prospect in Champaign, which is not here in Urbana, as all of you know. But it was requested that some people in the community who bike and walk provide input about roads in Urbana that are similarly dangerous. So I'm here to talk about roads that, if you think about it, are just like Prospect. We're talking roads that are 4 or more lanes and that have a speed limit of 35 miles an hour or above, as is the case where the accident was in Prospect. So if you think about that for a moment, what roads come to mind in Urbana? Vine and Cunningham, kind of like, and also University Avenue. A couple weeks ago, I had a friend that had to go pick up a car on Vine Street, and she only has a bicycle to do so with. And she had a really hard time figuring out how to safely get to pick up her car on Vine Street with only a bicycle, for an obvious reason. There isn't really a safe way to get to where she had to pick up her car on Vine Street on a bicycle, unless you're going to ride on the sidewalk. The annual Santa Rampage sort of fun ride that people go on dressed up in Santa costumes is scheduled for December 8th. That's a Sunday. And in previous years when I've been on this ride with children and bicycles and others, we end up going to La Mixteca, which is at the corner of University and where Cunningham and Vine meet. They're kind of out at 5 Points. And there's not a safe way to get on a bicycle there either. And in the case of that establishment, families go there, and families go there on bikes. And there's not a safe way to get kids on bikes there. It's just not a thing. So I would like to encourage the Bike and Pedestrian Advisory Council, as well as the City of Urbana in general, to start thinking about how they're going to restructure infrastructure so that there is a way to get anywhere on a bike or on foot, because there are entire islands of this town that are fairly inaccessible due to the speed limits and the numbers of lanes of traffic that pedestrians and bicyclists have to cross. I think that in particular, this is a component of a Vision Zero plan, in that it's thinking about how to restructure the infrastructure so that there are not barriers that create unsafe conditions for pedestrians and cyclists that are ultimately going to end up in their deaths. One of the streets that I named had a pedestrian death in the past year, for sure, and that's really horrible. We need to, as a city, adopt a strong Vision Zero plan, not just a plain, like, sort of not Vision Zero plan. We don't need to just sort of halfway do it.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for Kelly? Okay, thanks, Kelly. Anyone else from the public wish to speak today? Jason?
So, if it's okay, I'm just going to quickly share some of somewhat similar stuff that I've shared with the City Council. One thing is related to what Kelly just spoke on, which is the idea that there are these islands in our community that you can't get to if you're in one of the other islands. I will make a new tab, don't worry. Sorry about this. Cool.
Is it going to work?
I don't know. Seems like maybe not. So okay, I'll try to do it without visuals. So there was a study out of I believe it was Toronto that looked at it was a specific study of high traffic intersections and high traffic roads, which separate, which create these islands. In Toronto, I believe it was Toronto, they found that the bike and pedestrian infrastructure in Toronto created these islands that were much smaller than people would be willing to bike. So people, for the most part, are willing to bike somewhere on the 25-minute range, which is about 3 miles. So I sort of overlaid on a map of Urbana, with Urbana centered 1.5 miles, which is about 10 minutes, which is less time than the Toronto study was trying to look at. Here it looks like you can get probably pretty much everywhere. If you look at, this is the bike map that I forget which organization locally puts out. It hasn't been updated in a while, but it's still a pretty decent approximation for where there are decent bike infrastructure. A couple of things have changed. But if you look at these roads which have high traffic, where there's high stress, where crossing these roads is difficult, even crossing these roads at intersections is difficult, you start to see that we have these islands as well. So crossing basically any of these roads or riding along any of these roads is prohibitively dangerous, prohibitively scary. You can't ride along University. Crossing University is scary. I've almost been run over there. My girlfriend's almost been run over there. Like, this is, people blow red lights constantly at that intersection. I mean, 50% of the time at Racine University, a person will blow a red light. Not like a little bit, maybe, just absolutely, like you can count down 3 seconds before they hit the stop line, the light's still red, and then they go through. I mean, it's not, the behavior of drivers on that road is unacceptable for a road where anyone outside of a car is expected to cross. For some of them, the only reason that the person didn't get T-boned is because I had pressed the pedestrian crosswalk sign, and so the people that would have T-boned a driver did not get a green. So there are other roads here. Vine and Cunningham is obviously a dangerous road. As Kelly mentioned, I mean, someone died at Vine. Someone died literally like 2 blocks that way. I was crossing that road at night once and literally almost got run over in almost exactly the same way. I had taken out my phone and turned on my phone's light simply so that the driver that I was afraid was going to jump the light, make a turn into me, so that I could hold up my phone and shake the light at them. And then they looked at me like they were offended that I had done that, because I was like, look, I can see that you're looking like you're going to jump this light. You haven't looked over at any of the pedestrians. It wasn't just me. It was like 12 people. Like, it was me and my girlfriend and like 5 or 6 other people waiting to cross the road, and this person almost just blew through all of us. So this is not like a little bit, oh, maybe sometimes someone's going to die. It's like, no, we know someone died there. Someone's going to die there again. And so far, the city's response to it has been that it's operating as intended, which is unacceptable. And so I'll say, like Vision Zero is a good start for the city, but it's not actually, it is the reasonable thing to do. It's not a extreme position to take. Getting to 0 deaths should not be an extreme position to take. If it was any other topic, taking and making a statement that we don't want anyone to die from X would not need any discussion. Gun violence. We want 0 people to die from gun violence. Of course we want 0 people to die from gun violence. What are we going to do to get there? We want 0 people to die from road deaths? Well, I don't know. Maybe it's going to be too expensive. That's really just not an acceptable. We should not be having a discussion about that. People's lives are not something you trade off for money. Frankly, the fact that Urbana doesn't have Vision Zero is really, really, really upsetting. So.
Okay, thanks. Anyone else? Okay, next is unfinished business, Vision Zero Subcommittee. Cynthia.
Thank you, everyone. So we brought this to the commission last time. Well, does not want to do that. There were a number of revisions requested. And so I am bringing that back. And here we go. If I can get back to the desktop. There we are. Well, it was there a minute ago. Is it under presentations, Lily? Nope, it's on Where did it go?
Yeah, it's the first PowerPoint right there.
Oh, that is a PowerPoint, okay. It gave it a new name. If that's, I wonder if the right one is there, because it's not supposed to be crash data presentation. That's not, that's very strange.
Do you see the one at the
That one will not
top?
open. That's already been, we already dealt with that. Lily opened it, it should work. But this looks like it's
maybe
opening
Lily
the
should go
Urbana
drive that
Police Department
computer.
strategic plan.
Park District.
Oh, the Park District, that's the Park Districts. Yeah, that did not look. I wonder where mine went.
You're going to go back to in this. We've broken it.
Well, where did it go?
It was in the box folder.
It was in Dropbox,
Dropbox,
yeah.
yeah.
But it was here. That's what I thought too. I don't know where that one came from. Having enjoyment tonight with technology.
Right click on that,
Right click on which, this one?
that one.
This one. All righty. It does not show it.
No, it doesn't. I would go to Dropbox.
Oh, boy. There we go again. I hit delete. Okay. All right. Well, I came early and did this so we wouldn't have to spend time here on it, and clearly that did not work.
Do you want us to go ahead and talk about the website subcommittee and come back?
Well, if I sign in right away, I can pull it up.
Okay.
And I can let Lily continue adventures with computers while I begin the discussion, although it looks like it's starting to load here. If we go to My Files, VPAC, and Presentations, it should be there. So based on the input we got last time, I have brought back to you a revised resolution for us to pass and send forward to the City Council. I can read that so that the general public knows. There were some copies in back for anyone who's here who would like to take a look at it. So it starts with our whereases, and we have, whereas the City of Urbana Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Commission was established on June 16, 2006, and is authorized under Urbana City Code Chapter 23, Article 11, Section 23-146 through 23-150, blah, blah, blah. Whereas, the duties of the Commission include advising City Council on how to make bicycling and walking viable and safe modes of transportation in the City of Urbana, performing evaluations and recommending action plans for biking and walking facilities, developing education and public outreach opportunities on bicycle and pedestrian issues, and assisting the city in the development of bicycle and pedestrian systems with the community specifically. And whereas the City of Urbana aspires to reduce the number of fatal and serious injury crashes on its streets to 0, and whereas the most current long-range transportation plan report card indicates worsening traffic crash statistics for the metropolitan planning area in recent years, with Urbana city limits including the University of Illinois having 10 pedestrian and 1 bike deaths among its 20 traffic fatalities in the last 10 years, compared to 5 bicycle and pedestrian deaths among its 12 traffic fatalities in the 10 years previous to that. And there are numbers. BPAC, yes. And whereas the City of Urbana supports and encourages the efforts by our regional partner agency to prioritize safety improvements for people walking, bicycling, and using mobility devices, and to eliminate deaths and serious injuries on our entire transportation network, including public mass transit and motor vehicle transportation. It should be at the top. And it's not again.
Sort by date modified. Descending.
Oh, decent.
That's it. Whereas Vision Zero is a traffic safety policy that takes a systems approach to achieving safety for all road users that has been adopted in more than 30 U.S. cities and in countries throughout the world. Whereas the City of Urbana adopted the 2016 Bicycle Master Plan, which includes Vision Zero, with an ultimate goal of being zero transportation-related deaths or serious injuries in Urbana City, and is in the process of developing a pedestrian master plan. Whereas Champaign County has a long-term vision of zero fatalities due to roadway crashes. And whereas the state of Illinois has stated in the Illinois Strategic Highway Safety Plan 2017 as it has a goal to reduce roadway crash fatalities to zero. And whereas the City of Urbana departments, including Public Works, Police, and Fire, are actively employing programs to improve safety and response time. And whereas Vision Zero builds upon those existing programs to help meet the Council's adopted performance measures to achieve a reduction in the number of fatal and serious injury crashes to zero. And whereas the Urbana Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Commission now finds that a recommendation for a Vision Zero resolution should be submitted to the City Council for adoption. Now therefore be it resolved by the Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Commission of the City of Urbana, Illinois as follows. Section 1. The City of Urbana shall set as the official policy of the city the Vision Zero goal of zero roadway fatalities and serious injuries by 2030. Section 2. The City Council will direct the Urbana Bicycle and Pedestrian Commission to establish a Vision Zero task force to develop a Vision Zero communication plan for the city. Section 3. The Vision Zero task force will explore funding options for developing a Vision Zero strategic plan, including a listing of available funding sources and options. So, given that much of the discussion during our last meeting was about the fact that the city is currently reducing staffing and programs, I wanted to look at funding options. Also, I gave you a handout as the 9 components of a strong Vision Zero commitment, so you can see what it is that they are looking for in a Vision Zero plan. So I went and looked. There are grants available through the National Safety Council, through their Safe System Innovation Grants Program, and it allows qualifying organizations to explain how their innovative program will reduce roadway fatalities, set a time frame for reduction, outline how the program will be evaluated, detail how the organization intends to reach its target audience, and list the funds requested. I looked through the award winners for 2019 and a variety of projects and organizations. As you can see here, $1 million was allocated. And I pulled out the City of North Miami Beaches project because it had components to ensure effective deployment of strategies to reduce road fatalities, prioritizing safety for vulnerable users like cyclists and pedestrians, and they were awarded $200,000. I went and looked further back. Chicago Department of Transportation got a grant in 2017, a Vision Zero Garfield Park project, and it had goals for Vision Zero. And so you can see the goals here. I won't read all of those goals, but that is what they listed. You can see the plan on the website if you go there. So also online, there, as we have stated before, are a wealth of resources. It will be available to us, including the communications toolkit, which it says provides everything you need to publicize the work of the coalition. And so these are resources that are ready-made that we can adapt to our community. I also took time today to call and speak with the current director of Champaign-Urbana Public Health District, Julie Pride, excuse me, about Vision Zero, since this is a serious public health issue. I asked if the Public Health District would be interested in partnering to apply for grants to develop a Vision Zero plan for our community, and she was absolutely on board with doing that. She, in fact, was surprised that we did not already have a program for Vision Zero in place. So I think there are a number of options there for us. We could also apply for it through Healthy Champaign County, which covers more than just the city of Urbana. So there are a number of options for funding. As mentioned at the last meeting, I think we have the option of applying for the Illinois Department of Transportation safety grants. There are a number of non-infrastructure, education-oriented, planning-oriented, funded programs through that I think that we could also apply for. So we had originally talked last month about developing a communications plan to explain to the community what Vision Zero is, what the parts of it are, and why we are doing it. And so I think that we could proceed with this resolution with the understanding that that is the part that we would begin implementing, and then find funding to develop a full strategic plan that we can develop some partnerships to do in the community. So I will now discontinue talking and get your feedback on the revised resolution and how we want to proceed.
Great, thanks. Any comments or questions? Yeah, go ahead, Morgan.
Yeah, thank you, Cynthia, and I know Audrey had helped some too, or I don't know who else was on the subcommittee.
Jeff, I think.
And Jeff, thank you. This is excellent, and I am very supportive of us moving forward with it. You know, we incorporated the issues of what can we do, what can be done without it, increasing staff time at Public Works at this point, and I think it's ready to go. I saw one typo, but it's minor.
Thank you.
That's my opinion, personal opinion, not U of I opinion.
Okay. Yeah, Craig.
So just so I understand, with Section 2, at this time, you're looking to establish a Vision Zero task force to develop a Vision Zero communication policy. And then with 3, there would be looking at funding for a strategic plan. That's at this time.
Yes,
Yeah.
and the communication plan would, at this point, be primarily focused, if I understand what we're doing, on explaining what this is to the community, so that we can explain what it is, why we need it, and how we want to do it. And watched the meeting video again, and it seemed that we were talking basically about putting together a task force primarily made up of BPAC members, with consultation with perhaps a few other partners to work on the communication plan. There was a variety of discussion, including having students work on it as interns, et cetera. Frankly, with the toolkit that we have, I don't know that we need to do that. I think we can take the toolkit and adapt it pretty readily and put our data and our information in there and utilize that locally. It'll be a process of getting it out and into the right hands, and we represent a number of partners sitting around the table here that I think we can work with, and I can also have further discussion with Julie Pride about how to push that kind of information out. Public health is exceptionally skilled at doing the kind of behavioral change communications that we're looking at doing here to improve health. And so when you can encourage people to change behavior for drug use and transmission of sexual diseases, we can communicate about reducing roadway crashes.
So I think, thinking about this, that it doesn't seem that there's very much staff time involved, from what I can tell, so I'll support it. Just keep in mind, if it turns and there's at some point additional staff time involved, then that could be a roadblock. Just keep that in mind, because that is a very real thing to deal with. But I think it's a good start, and I support it.
Any other comment? Yes.
Cynthia, could you say a little bit of what's included in the toolbox? What kinds of things?
Well, you know what? I didn't go back and look at it today. I was doing, before this, I went and did a walking audit for Blair Park for Safe Routes to Parks, and so I did not actually go back and look at it. I don't know if anybody else remembers some of the things that are in there. They have strategies, they have templates, they have a variety of other pieces of information that I think we can make use of. And I will say there's more than one organization that has stuff online. There is really a lot out there. It's more a question of figuring out what works best for us and utilizing that. Did you have something in particular in mind? Okay. If you do, let us know. We're happy to utilize it.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's not a huge demand of staff time, and then at some point, when we start applying for grants, we may need some help with that, as far as gathering the right resources and statistics and whatever else you need to apply for grants. That might involve some staff time, but theoretically, that will be paid for with the grant eventually. I guess just as a matter of format, the three sections say the City of Urbana shall, City Council will direct. It's really a BPAC recommendation that the city take these steps. So I'd say maybe before all those sections 1, 2, 3 say Urbana Bicycle Pedestrian Advisory Commission recommends the following, and then section 1, 2, 3. Because we aren't really making the decision for whether the city of Urbana does this or not. We're recommending that the council take these steps.
So, Bill, I mean, could we just as easily change shall, will, and will to should, and should? It's our resolution, they should do this? Or, I guess I'm not
Yeah,
sure
that
what
would
you were
work
saying
too.
about how the edit would be written.
Well, you could say that the Advisory Commission of the City recommends the following actions.
Yeah,
But then we would take out shall
right.
and will
The same person, though.
and,
You know, like, we recommend that
Would.
you actually do that.
yeah,
You know, like,
yeah.
I kind of like recommending stronger language instead of,
Should. Yeah, should seems a little wishy-washy.
yeah,
Okay, so let's say, let's go with
recommend.
as follows. We resolve as follows. Urbana Bicycle Pedestrian Advisory Commission recommends the following. And then section 1, 2, 3. In section 1, 2, 3, take out the shall, will, and will. So be the city of Urbana set as the official policy. Does that sound okay? And I can, okay.
So what, yeah, just leave out the shall and will. We recommend that.
So, yeah, so now therefore be it resolved by the Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Commission of the City of Urbana, Illinois as follows. The Urbana Bicycle Pedestrian Advisory Commission recommends the following. Section 1, the City of Urbana set as the official policy of the city Division 0 goal. Section 2, the City Council direct the Urbana Bicycle and Pedestrian Commission. Section 3, Division 0 Task Force explore funding. See what I did there? Okay. Okay. Yeah, other than that, I'm fine with that. And, you know, I don't think anybody expects Vision Zero to be a cure, but it's a step in the right direction. And I think our concern with getting into a big multi-agency task force is that it would actually be distracting from things that we actually could have another effect on that could affect safety even more. We want to make sure that if we invest the time and resources in this, it's not going to take away from other things we could have been doing. Or if it does, then, you know, it has a better maximum benefit. Any other discussion on that?
I would just say it's a national trend. Vision Zero is a national trend because traffic crashes are alarming and getting higher. And I don't know if any of you read that it's a national security threat, the inactivity of Americans and their inability to move around. It's the military is having a hard time recruiting.
The Illinois National Guard.
I was wondering if it was exactly,
Yes.
yeah.
The National Guard in every state said it is a
It's-
national crisis.
we have yeah.
emergency. They called it an emergency.
Yeah. So this is, we're not alone. We're not making this up. I know it seems like one death, one crash, it doesn't seem like a lot, but I have experienced near misses many times, and if this were the airline industry, they would not be allowing near misses left and right. And I think we need to move more, towards that. And I think this is the first step. And we have to just agree that we have a problem, and we have to agree that we want to solve the problem, and I think that's what this is doing.
Yeah, I've had three vehicle crashes on my bikes. And one of them was serious enough to do some pretty good damage. So we don't want to have crashes. We don't want to have deaths. I think it's just about how do we best go about preventing those. One thing I was thinking about earlier about the communication, somebody, a friend of mine that teaches a class had a assignment where he had kids do podcasts, and they really liked doing that. If we could do like maybe a Mythbusters video contest or something, because so many people still don't get how to use bike lanes and how to drive around bike lanes. There was an accident just a couple weeks ago on Race and Elm where somebody got right hooked because they both went through the stop sign at the same time. The bicycle and the car didn't signal and turned into the bicycle. And if the car had been behaving right in the bike lane, they would have blocked the bike lane before they turned right. So things like that, I think people still don't get, even though we have videos on it that were made 10 years ago. Maybe we need to take some excerpts from those and make them more available. But I think we can do a lot communication-wise and education-wise. Of course, one of the challenges we have is that we have a lot of turnover, and we have the average time people stay in town is about 2 years with the students and everything. But we also have a lot of people that are here, for a long time, and people that work here from out of town that could benefit from education.
I actually had the same thought biking over here. I was biking up Illinois, and there was a car that very politely followed me, very politely did not get in the left-hand turn lane where I needed to turn into the mall. Very polite, so it is it's a courtesy. I mean, they have the power, frankly, and I grew up in a state, when I grew up, it was bikes, watch out for pedestrians, cars, watch out for bikes. And it was the hierarchy of power, and you take care of those who are beneath you. And I honestly feel like we've lost all of it. I frequently see cyclists, biking through a crowd of pedestrians as if it's like a whack-a-mole situation. And it's just not, I know that they can survive. I know no one's going to get hurt, but that doesn't mean that those pedestrians are not getting completely freaked out. And that's not appropriate either. And it's the same with cars. When cars pass me, they know they're not going to hit me, but it freaks me out. And so there's honestly just a lot of common courtesy that kind of just needs to be brought back into our everyday lives, and everyone just needs to relax and slow down. So
can I make a motion that we approve the Vision Zero resolution?
Yep. Moved by Cynthia. Is there a second?
I will second that motion.
Seconded by Sue. Any more discussion? Yeah, Morgan.
Just the typo is
Oh,
number
yeah.
11. It says X1 instead of XI.
Oh, I thought that was interesting, yeah.
Tell me again where it is.
It's
Oh,
the third
the first
line in the
whereas.
first paragraph, at the second character.
Oh, okay.
Should be an
Yes,
I and
you're
it's a
right.
1.
I think I carried that typo over. I think it was there last time. And I didn't
Oh,
correct
no,
it.
I think you did it.
No, I didn't retype it.
And we just
Paste it
need
as
to
much
be
as
more
I
polite with each other.
Okay, all in favor say aye.
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 Anyone opposed? That motion carries. Thank you all very much. Next is update on the status of complete streets in the subdivision code and manual of practice. Marcus, this is something I brought up last month, and Marcus picked up on. Lily kind of tipped him off, so he's been working on something he's going to tell us about, and we can ask questions, offer suggestions, all that.
Hey, Bill, while Marcus is bringing that up, when would this go to City Council for, on their agenda?
In 2 weeks, they're going to be, there will be committee of the whole, and they'll be discussing our snow, the expansion of the snow removal zones. So probably 2 weeks after that, I would deliver it to the City Council and make a presentation.
Let us know.
And maybe a couple people could show up for that.
Thank you for your interest in planning stuff. So as you know, the city had a planning case back in 2011, 2010, where Plan Commission voted to forward to City Council to amend the comprehensive plan to include a complete streets policy. And that was then incorporated into the comprehensive plan, adding or updating Goal 47 of the comprehensive plan, which was to create a multimodal transportation system to include goal number 47.8, which is use complete streets concepts in designing, constructing, reconstructing, and maintaining roadways and public roads rights of way. And then it implemented Chapter 7 of the comprehensive plan to include a step that said update appropriate documents such as the Urbana Subdivision and Land Development Code to reflect the complete streets policy. And I'm not sure of the exact timing, but that was probably actually a couple years after city staff started updating the city's comprehensive plan, which is dated 2005, has had a few amendments to it, but we've been working on an overhaul of it. We say a revision, but it's probably 80% moved or shifted or new. So we've been working on it for a long time, and I took that up when I started working here back in 2016. Jeff Engstrom was working on it before that, and Kevin Garcia, and lots of smart people. So I, as well as probably most of the planning staff, would probably agree that the most straightforward way to promote and implement this adopted complete streets policy would be by writing and adopting a standalone document, similar to the city's bicycle master plan, which has undergone recent revision, or the upcoming new pedestrian master plan. Both of these were, Champaign County Regional Planning Commission products, lots of city funds and some city time going into putting those plans together. The bicycle master plan was also adopted as an element to the city's comprehensive plan. It remains to be seen whether or not the pedestrian master plan will also be adopted as an element. Writing a plan or even a policy and getting it passed by Plan Commission and City Council is time intensive and would need to meet one or more of the stated priorities of the Urbana City Council, as we are all doing, having to do less with less in these times of budget and staff constraints. Meanwhile, other avenues to implement the adopted complete streets policy include incorporating its goals and objectives into other existing documents and during everyday decision making and practice. And that's what I'll be focusing on tonight, which is what is under my control. During the revision of the city's subdivision code and drafting the new manual of practice, which has been ongoing since at least 2007, planning staff consulted with other city staff on ways to improve the code itself and to streamline implementation of the code by breaking out the technical aspects and administrative tasks into a new manual of practice, allowing routine tasks and decisions to be handled by staff and reserving the more important policy decisions to be handled by Plan Commission and or City Council. This is similar to the process that City of Champaign did several years ago. These draft documents, the subdivision code revision and the manual of practice, were then reviewed by a technical advisory group to get their technical expert feedback. This was 24 members from 21 different agencies. Those comments and feedback were incorporated into the draft. And because those were mostly agency people, we then, and planners and other private sector engineers, we then took that revision out to the development committee, the real estate brokers, the developers, the attorneys, those folks who are less engineering related and more let's promote getting stuff built in the city. They provided their input and feedback into those draft documents. That ended probably about a year ago. Those comments are being incorporated into the draft. They got reviewed by our legal division a second time. There have been some go-rounds, some internal communications to get some final things tweaked and make sure that they fit our legal requirements. And then, so we're going to be on track with presenting that to Plan Commission in the next month or so. And then,
Marcus,
yes,
is that just the subdivision code or the subdivision code and the manual?
both of them, because they kind of run article by article, track by track. They address the same things in the same order. So we'll probably be breaking it out into two different sections and bringing it up at two different Plan Commission meetings, and then depending on the feedback from Plan Commission, those comments will be incorporated. If they're significant, it'll have to go back to legal division to make sure that those changes are doable, allowable, and then it would go to City Council. And then, you know, it might bounce back and forth between Committee of the Whole and then eventually to City Council once a final version makes it through. We're still getting input from some of our city staff members, Public Works, Engineering, Legal Division, to make sure that, you know, it isn't just a planning document. You know, this is, you know, the comprehensive plan is like the vision, and everybody gets their chance to put their input into that. The subdivision code regulates most or many of the different city departments and divisions. So we can't just lay that on a department and say, you're going to follow this. It needs buy-in. Like any plan, it needs buy-in from the people that it's going to be regulating, or else it will get ignored or thwarted. So getting into the presentation a little bit, let's see if I can make this a little bigger. So some of the revisions that we made to the subdivision code to address complete streets. In the second section, which is purposes, only 2 sections were added to this out of probably 15 to 20. Section G was added to provide for transportation facilities that safely and efficiently accommodate all modes of travel, including walking, bicycling, driving, and riding transit, as provided for by the city's complete streets policy. So this is in the subdivision code, and so it lays out the purpose of the subdivision code to protect and provide for transportation for all modes. Now, you interpret that as you will. You know, how does that get translated into everyday decision making? Well, if somebody wants to do something, they say it meets this purpose. Or, hey, you're doing this thing that is counter or is not including this stated purpose of the subdivision code in it. So that's, you know, an incorporation by reference. And then the only other change in purposes to the subdivision code was the last one, letter 0, which says to ensure that land is developed in ways that conserve natural resources and ensure the long-term environmental sustainability of the community. So in with complete streets, we also incorporated sustainability, resiliency, and environmental stewardship. Those are the 2 big things that were added to the subdivision code in this go-round. Now, let's see, next slide. So the other main change where complete streets is mentioned is in the scope of the subdivision code. Letter C of the scope statement says that adherence to the requirements, standards, and specifications of this chapter, meaning the subdivision code, does not relieve a developer of the obligation to comply with any other applicable requirements that regulate land development, including but not limited to this version, new, as you can see, added in the Urbana Bicycle Master Plan as amended. So it incorporates specifically the adopted Bicycle Master Plan. And then it also adds in, and this was already in there before this was brought up, Chapter 6.5 of this code as amended, and any other city regulations or ordinances, including but not limited to the Complete Streets policy, and provides the ordinance number. So even though we may not have an independent standalone Complete Streets document, by listing it here, if and when we write a Complete Streets policy, it will already be referenced and directed to people that they have to follow it. So whether there's graphics in there, whether there's technical standards in there, the subdivision code will say you're supposed to be following this. Whether or not you're following the other aspects of the subdivision code, you also need to follow this as if it were the building code or the zoning ordinance or the sanitary sewer technical standards. So that's the second reference in the subdivision code to the Complete Streets policy. Let's see. So the subdivision code itself doesn't provide technical standards or graphics. It limits the standards to those that are so important that they're considered city council policy. And such as the one table in the subdivision code is the table on the widths of road rights of way, whether you're highway arterial or a collector road or a private road. That's the only table at the end of the subdivision code where it gets into saying you're going to be this wide or you're going to be this wide. There are other smaller instances throughout the subdivision code where it references technical aspects of development, but it really relegates all of those to either the manual of practice or other standards, such as IDOT standard specifications or the public right-of-way accessibility guidelines or Illinois accessibility standards. So we took all the technical aspects out of the subdivision code, or the vast majority of them, move them over to the manual of practice. These are considered the things, this is considered an administrative document. It is administered by city staff on a day-to-day basis. There are waiver procedures that can be handled by city staff, whether it is the Secretary of the Planning Commission or the Public Works Director. Some portions or instances in the subdivision code or manual of practice might refer things back to Plan Commission or the Administrative Review Committee. But by and large, it's primarily a document that is implemented administratively. That's designed to move things quickly for citizens and developers within the city. Because if you have to wait for a city council meeting or a plan commission meeting followed by a city council meeting to get a waiver to have to put in a curb in a particular size development, and I'm making something up right now, Craig will hopefully correct me if I say something wrong. If you have to wait on plan commission then city council for every single deviation from a construction standard, things are going to slow really way down. And that was one of the big complaints and concerns that we got from developers, was things need to be able to move at a reasonable pace because time is money. So the things that staff, but also expert staff and people on Plan Commission, because these will go to Plan Commission, things that we deemed to be administratively handleable got moved to the manual of practice. If Plan Commission or City Council don't feel that that was appropriate, they will tell us, hey, put them back into the subdivision code. So moving over.
Just real quick, because the revisions to the subdivision code, you talked about the complete streets policy.
Right.
Is, you've listed it here based on the ordinance that says we should have one, right?
Right.
And so knowing that we're working, actively pursuing the pedestrian, is that the whole name, pedestrian master plan? Is it possible to include that now as one of the items? Like you have the Urbana Bicycle Master Plan, could you list the pedestrian, and the when complete, or is that something that will have to go back all the way through the process of approving it to add it in later?
So the nice thing, right before that complete streets policy there, it says, and any other city regulations or ordinances, including but not limited to. So if the pedestrian master plan, say, was incorporated into the comprehensive plan with a resolution, that would automatically be included.
And then it could be called out the way the bike plan is.
It could be
in the future, but it wouldn't have to be. Okay.
Correct. And this was, I think, a recommendation. The complete streets policy phrase was added in there from a recommendation by Tara McCauley from the Public Health District, I believe. So before it had said just as amended and any other city regulations or ordinances. And I think it was Tara who put in a little comment that said, hey, would this be a good place? Because, we don't have a policy yet, so we don't want to say the Urbana Complete Streets policy, because then people like me would be like, where is that? I'm not finding that. And then we'd be like, well, we've got a comprehensive plan and we've got an ordinance, but we don't have a document that says Complete Streets policy. So we lumped it in there in the section that says any other city regulations and ordinances, resolutions or regulations or ordinance. So there is an ordinance. So it does fit into that subline.
So Marcus, I have to intervene here.
Yep.
A complete streets policy can be an ordinance.
Okay.
That is a form of a complete streets policy.
Okay.
Under the National Complete Streets Coalition, there are a variety of ways in which you can adopt a policy.
Right.
And doing it by ordinance is one of them. So
Understood.
we are listed as having a complete streets policy. It is an ordinance policy. So I'm confused about why we say we don't have a policy.
I, as a planner, usually look to a policy to provide direction on how to do things, not just philosophies and concepts and tenets. So if it says, okay, you have X share of trips on that road is by motorized transportation and X is by transit bus and X is by pedestrians and X is by cyclists, and it's this wide and you have X amount in your budget, then you should consider doing these things and maybe provide a graphic. Or it directs you to somebody else's technical standard where they say those things.
So you're talking about guidelines.
Right.
Yes, okay. I agree, we do not have guidelines.
Right, right, yes. So, and I'll later on talk about what some of the other local cities have done. So yes, we have a policy in the form that we have an ordinance. It was heard as a plan case. Everybody agrees that we need it, but now how do we do it?
As someone who's done this work with other cities, we usually refer to this as an implementation plan, and what we're doing now is the implementation work that needs to be done, and then and the guidance is critical, as you've stated, and the options for exceptions and exemptions, et cetera. So.
Right. And so that's why the discussion is good, because people have taken me to task by saying, when I say we don't have a policy, I mean we don't have guidelines.
Okay, gotcha.
We don't have graphics that say, here's the cross-section and here's how big the lanes should be and stuff. And again, I'm also not a transportation engineer. So, I rely on, right?
Can I interject?
Please.
So, the ordinance we have is good, but it's very general. I know for me and my staff, probably would desire something, like the guidelines or something, a lot, maybe there's even typologies in there and
Right.
things like that. Because, a general ordinance is good, but it doesn't give you any
No.
guidance.
It doesn't. It doesn't. You're absolutely right. And in fact, when I've done presentations around the country, I have used the cross-sections the city of Champaign put together because I thought they were nice and clear and understandable, and they gave developers choices. So I think that, and it wasn't an enormous guideline book. It was a fairly simple
So we'll
set
have
of
to talk
guidance.
more about that particular document.
And then one of the things we talked about further, Cynthia, Marcus and I, is just that there's really no formal documentation process when we go through our designs, about waivers and things like that and exceptions and, why we didn't do something, a case in point would be Airport Road West up by Frasca. We just didn't have the funding for what the master plan identified as a multi-use path on the south side of the road. However, though, we did make sure that the road was built with the, and spaced out, and we acquired right-of-way at the corners for the future multi-use path. But we don't have that process sort of like
a checklist,
Yes.
and that's one of the things that's really helpful in, as I developed an implementation plan for a city in Missouri, and that was one of the things that, as a consultant, we did was we created a checklist for them so that they could use that, and it is really helpful, and I think engineers in particular, with what they have to do, need that kind of tool.
Well, and say, take the case in point with me, when I'm for it, but I'm leaving, and then it's the next person, like Shannon, who maybe she doesn't know of something, and you want to have something that isn't really dependent upon individual
Exactly.
preferences or individuals willing to do it.
You need processes that are written down and tools that people can use.
It's just the city way. This is what we
Absolutely.
do.
And, since Champaign adopted their guidance, they did have a roadway where they really agonized over the fact that they were not building it to the complete street standards that they desired to do. And I remember that discussion. It was really quite painful for them. So sometimes you do end up making changes. But having also a process whereby you can do that and make sure that when the opportunity presents itself that you can go back and fix that too. That's the other thing, like when you can, that funding becomes available. It gives us that opportunity.
I like the idea of the checklist, and, especially when there isn't necessarily a formal documentation process. So, engineering and public works and planning staff could say, in the perfect world, we would have done X. We would have added these things. Here's the barriers that we faced. Here's how far we got. So we had no funding for implementation, but we did require them to dedicate right-of-way so that when funds magically appear, some wonderful person writes an ITEP grant, we have this project that could have been done 5 years ago and was admitted that it should have been done, so maybe it could now go back and be accomplished. Where if there wasn't a checklist or some documentation procedure, that might all just get forgotten. And, complacent and happy that at least right-of-way was dedicated, but folks then forget about what the barrier was, that the path didn't get built or whatever, and that it wasn't that city council or public works staff didn't want it, it was simply funding at that time. So I wrote down checklist and chat up Cynthia.
I can send you the ones I had. We did it for Rolla, Missouri.
So then moving over from the subdivision code over to the manual of practice, which is the main avenue for providing technical standards. It is a mixture of like 250 pages worth of laying out excruciating detail about bends in sewer pipes and all that stuff specifically in that document, but it also references 25 different manuals at least, including some tree huggery ones like the Ashtoe Green Book or the NACTO Urban Bikeway Design Guide, or these ADA, ADA-AG, or PROWAG guidelines. So it would be very simple to, let's maybe go to the next slide, and say, so in Chapter 8 of the Manual of Practice, which is location and geometry of streets, etc., there's many of the sections have a list of referenced standards. And the 8 in this street, sidewalk, crosswalk chapter are these 8. And as you can see, number 6 says Urbana Bicycle Bike Master Plan. We're still working on our track changes. So the Bicycle Master Plan has already been incorporated into the new revision or the new writing of the Manual of Practice. And it could be fairly straightforward to add in Urbana Complete Streets policy in there as a reference standard. Again, knowing that, yes, it exists currently as a comprehensive plan amendment and an ordinance policy, and you can look at it for the tenets and the philosophies, but then there's also the Bicycle Master Plan, which has a map of what routes they want bicycles and in what timeline. And then when an implementation level policy does get written, it's already in there in the Manual of Practice to be referenced. This is a similar policy that we did in the street tree section of the Manual of Practice. We're working on a fee that developers have to pay for putting in trees in the right-of-way. Now, the city does not have an adopted street tree fee, but we are going to work on one, and then when it gets passed by City Council, it will already be in the Manual of Practice, and we don't have to wait for another revision to the manual to, have that be enforceable. So that would be, I think, just my main thing was wanting to point out where we already have incorporated it into the 2 documents, how we indirectly reference it. Craig was very helpful in explaining here's how we do it on a daily basis in practice, even if we don't have an implementation policy, because we know and understand that there is a philosophy policy, if you will. And yes.
Have you looked at the CUATS draft? Is it a draft or a standard?
It's a policy, yeah.
The CUATS policy for complete streets.
Right.
Is that something, since this has reference standards that are not all City of Urbana,
Right.
Is it something that could be listed now where it has that additional information?
I think
I guess I'm wondering that from the concept of people who are using the Manual of Practice. So it's staff and developers who would be, once the document's approved, the Manual of Practice? Is it all employees, or is it employees and the developers?
It's everybody who's doing anything in the city for new development.
Yeah.
Or significant renovation, revision.
I mean, maybe
Right.
it could even be together, or the CUATS one.
Right.
Just because the CUATS has all this description and background and purpose and reasoning. And
I think what we would need to do
I don't
is
know if that's an
to, look at it and make sure that there isn't anything counter to what City of Urbana staff or its people want to see, which I don't think is likely because it's, a CCRPC document that probably the city was involved with. There are other places in the documents where it references the document based on its geography. So if you're working in the City of Urbana, it's the City of Urbana zoning ordinance. If you're in the city's extraterritorial jurisdiction, it says you have to follow the Champaign County zoning ordinance. So it could be even referencing the city's complete streets policy, and in areas where you're in the extraterritorial jurisdiction, you would reference the CUATS Champaign County policy. So that's a good idea, and I've got that written down. So that leads into what other cities are doing. So I looked, and I think the city of Champaign, like Urbana, adopted a policy back in 2012 and incorporated it into their comprehensive plan. But again, I personally could not find evidence of a standalone implementation document. So if you've got guidelines, I would.
I think it's in their manual of practice, isn't it?
No.
I think Marcus is right. We adopted a policy with the Champaign Transportation Master Plan, and then those cross sections that are in the manual of practice kind of address it, but it wouldn't hurt if the city of Champaign also adopted more of a formal policy that outlined more specific guidelines. So similar to Urbana.
But it sounds like you might already be a step ahead in that you've incorporated them into your manual of practice. So I'll look at that maybe with the two of you and see where. More definitively, is it the village of Savoy? Savoy has adopted a standalone complete streets policy. I think it's 12 or 15 pages long. It references other policies and provides resources and provides a checklist. It doesn't have cross sections or typologies or anything, and presumably relies on those references for the engineers or whomever to glean what they need to figure out what they need in any particular instance. Similarly, Champaign County's Complete Streets policy also references other people's policies and provides resources, but doesn't have like an appendix of 25 typologies. There are lots of other model resolutions and ordinances, but fewer actual implementation policies, I guess I will say. Again, I haven't spent a lot of time on this because this was kind of just one policy out of 15 that I was supposed to incorporate into the subdivision ordinance and manual of practice. It's good to know, and I know that Urbana is all about active transportation and doing it right. The bicycle master plan is great, and that was one of the things when I asked Craig about, hey, where's our complete streets policy? It's like, well, in the meantime, we've got a bicycle master plan that's got proposed street segments and timelines that they're supposed to be implemented and the level of facility that's supposed to be there. So we use that when we are evaluating a project. Now again, so this is like 1/3 of what you wanted to know. The other thirds are, where and when do we choose to require stuff or do stuff? Where do we require a developer to do things? I sit in on our development review team meetings and I see the subdivisions come in, and I and the other planners are, usually always trying to maximize connectivity, but often you are working with, private property and neighborhoods who have gotten used to having a cul-de-sac at the end of a lane for the last 75 years. And maybe forgot or never knew that that cul-de-sac is actually a stub street and it's supposed to go into that farm field when that farm field develops into a residential subdivision. And so when you have those public and neighborhood meetings, those folks come out and say, we really don't necessarily want traffic coming through here from another 150 homes that has never been there before. It's going to change the essential character of our neighborhood. So those are the things, the questions, the conflicts that planners and engineers and city council members have to take into account when they make those decisions about what to require. Because if it isn't in the subdivision code to say you have to do X, Y, and Z, then all of these are asks that the city has to make to give them back something else in return. We'll do this if you do that. We will. If you give us connectivity, we may grant you a waiver for a front yard setback or something. So I'm pretty sure still, and I think it was Cynthia that explained this to me when I was really gung-ho and starting out. It's like, why isn't there a bike lane there? Why isn't there a sidewalk there? Well, Complete Streets is considering all modes of transportation when making planning decision. It isn't necessarily accommodating all of them in every instance. So that's that level of give and take, that trust that folks need to have in city staff, that yes, we are considering, we are looking, we're weighing those things. It's your job to call us on it when you think that we might not be doing it, but that's the opportunity for us then to come back and say, well, here's the 27 things that we considered in this one particular instance. And sometimes we're going to be wrong, and sometimes we're going to ask them for something, and 2 months later, I came back to a development review team meeting for a particular subdivision, and in an instance where they said, no, we're not going to have any connectivity there, all of a sudden, there was no car connectivity, but there was pedestrian and bicycle connectivity. So things are, you know, not always set in stone. They can be pushed. So, you know, stay involved. You know, we have public works staff that come to our development review team meetings. You know, Lily is there at every meeting pushing for smart planning, active transportation. Scott Tess is there when there are sustainability and resiliency issues, new developments coming in, and he's a really good advocate for active transportation and low impact development and stuff. I'm, you know, I'm open for suggestions and comments. I've talked more than I should have, but I will take any suggestions or comments that you've got.
This is so small. NACTO, I don't.
Oh, I know. Yeah, yeah. I saw that after I printed it off. It's like, no, that can't be right. And it says bike and bicycle in the same way. So.
I do have a question. Is this mainly residential subdivisions, or does this also include commercial development?
Commercial, industrial, also development that is of a certain threshold that might not be, you know, one single family residence. There's lots of exceptions and whatnot, but it definitely covers commercial and industrial as well.
You know, one thing that came through when we were talking about statistics the last few months is a very small percentage of the accidents involve bicyclists and pedestrians, less than 5%. But as we saw today, 55% of the deaths in the last 10 years were pedestrians or bicyclists.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder if there's some way to beef up that initial statement about transportation to all to give priority to the most vulnerable users.
So in the subdivision code inclusions here?
Yeah. At least make the point that that we recognize that pedestrians and bicyclists are the most vulnerable users, and they should be given priority, all due priority.
Do you want to say they should be given added protection, or when you say priority?
Yeah, I don't know how to say it. You know what I mean.
Yeah.
So
yes, they should be provided safe accommodation for mobility, and that will vary depending on the location, the roadway type, land use, et cetera.
The other thing I was wondering about is with, well, a couple of things. When we have like a trail marked in the bicycle master plan and somebody puts in a subdivision where that trail is supposed to go, is that considered a requirement, or is that just considered like a suggestion?
Could you repeat that?
If we have a trail, say, connecting, what's that subdivision? South Ridge across, say, through the old orchard fields to Meadowbrook Park. I think there's a trail there.
In the bicycle master plan?
In the bicycle master plan.
I would.
And somebody wants to put in a subdivision there. Would we require that they put in an 8 or 10 foot concrete trail there?
I will defer to Craig, but as a planner, I would say that it is not required, but it would be a very strong talking point, and the more plans and policies that you can point to say, this is the city's vision, and you're not going to get a development unless you follow these, but that's just the planner aspect. I'm going to leave it to Craig for saying you have to.
I would say we lean to that you have to.
Okay.
An example would be the retreat. You know, we asked them, I guess, have to or ask, but it's ask, please put this in. The bicycle master plan shows it.
Right.
So that's what we did, and they accommodated it accordingly. Now, I guess like Marcus is saying, let's say there's some type of hardship case presented, then at the very least there would be space provided for it. But you know, I guess to flip it back, we haven't had a lot of developments where we've had that situation.
Yeah. Well, the other one recently was the nursing home development subdivision.
Right.
Where
Now that one was a little different, but the, you know, the sidewalk had to go in, but then the city wasn't involved at all with, you know, how it went in. So,
even though, but see, that was in our bicycle master plan. There's a trail drawn there to connect to Weaver Park.
oh, I see what you're getting
But
at
yeah,
there.
it's
I
not
don't-
city, it's not city right away, and in the bicycle master plan, it said that, you know, the park district and the county were supposed to implement
Yeah.
this.
County's a higher level of government,
Yeah.
so they don't have to follow our.
Yeah.
Yeah, except that it was also in the Greenways and Trails plan, which the county adopted.
I think that one, a little bit different, was that it was a pre-existing subdivision that was being.
Yeah.
Right,
So-
there was actually no development going on, so,
Yes.
you know, there's not much leg for the subdivision code. They still had to follow things and ask for waivers, but it would have been probably more of an reasonable of an ask if they were building a new facility. So Scott suggested this wording from the ITE manual for the subdivision code purpose, something along of that their roads and streets are routinely designed and operated to provide the safest achievable access for all users, including bicyclists, pedestrians, and transit riders. And then,
That sounds great. I would just reorder the listing.
okay. And then the word achievable
Yeah.
then refers to that a pathway was like, you couldn't do it here. So it's kind of like when the EPA says, you know, best practicable solution. It might be doable, but if it costs you $1 million, you don't have to do it. So
the
I
only-
will,
The only other comment I had, or question, I guess, would be for those of us that want more, I don't know, more transit-friendly development that may involve some out-of-the-box thinking or allow developers to think out of the box if they don't want to have 60-foot frontages on roads like we expect to have. Should that be accomplished through the subdivision code, or should that be accomplished through the zoning ordinance?
So the zoning ordinance has its planned unit development section. We would like to see more planned unit developments where, say, people are going to come in and they would like to trade maybe smaller required frontages for things like solar or things like bike paths. You know, and they can say that these developments are meeting the bicycle master plan or are meeting renewable energy goals, and so the give and take is we'll put in X if you give us X waiver or whatnot. But a lot of the items in the subdivision code are eligible for waivers from them, whether it's you know, sidewalks on two sides versus one side, or putting in maybe a multi-use path. Those waivers are typically run through the Administrative Review Committee, which is the Public Works Director / City Engineer and the Secretary of the Plan Commission and the Building Safety Official, or the Community Development Director, actually. So it's open to that, and there's a section in there about low-impact development and, you know, innovative design and whatnot. So there are avenues for people to do that kind of stuff.
Okay. Other questions? Jeff?
I'll just say that the city of Champaign used to have, or used to negotiate trails in subdivisions by waiving sidewalks on one side of the street, and I don't think they were thrilled with the result because they did have extensive trails that went through the subdivision, but having sidewalks on both sides of the street really kind of served a purpose that for kind of connecting the subdivision to other parts of the subdivision. But so they adopted, they clarified in the code that if the trail was required by the bike plan, that it was also required in the subdivision, so that way it was less of a negotiation and more of, we're going to get the sidewalks on both sides of the street and the trail.
Okay.
So something to consider there. I don't think you want to be in a situation where you're negotiating away things that,
Right.
so try to codify as much as possible. That way, when a developer comes in and says, we don't want to do this, or we want to do this instead of that, you have a lot more leverage to require both the solar panels and the trails or whatever it
Right.
is. One other thing I'll ask, and I don't know how you guys handle it. What about lights in residential subdivisions?
Right.
Do you guys have a requirement for any public lights, or is it all just residential yard lights?
No, we've got a right-of-way street lighting chapter in there.
So that would be in residential subdivisions as well as commercial and industrial?
I can't say for sure. Does it ring a bell with you?
I wasn't thinking that it was a requirement. Was it? It is? You don't think yard lights? Well, okay, beacons at the intersections, but then yard lights in the segments? Don't know.
So it might just be at the intersections.
Yeah, that would be a step ahead of Champaign. Champaign could definitely use that. And one thing I'll also add that I've noticed that's a kind of something that could be improved in Champaign is they do allow the residential yard lights, but a lot of times I think they're supposed to be 15 feet away from the sidewalk, but a lot of times they're, on big lots, they're 20 or 30 feet away.
Right.
And then in the winter when people are trying to walk their dogs or whatever it is, and it gets dark, it gets dark at 5 p.m., it's just not a safe situation.
Right.
So trying to get as much lighting, or not as much as possible, but pedestrian scale lighting in residential neighborhoods is important.
Keep close to sidewalk. Okay.
Any other questions? Annie?
I have one thing to say, that this is a beautiful presentation. What font did you use?
That is Calibri.
It looks
I
great.
believe.
It looks like old-timey and yet new. As a graphic designer, I'm loving this. I also want to say, if there ever is another situation where someone's interested in putting in not an 8-foot, and maybe BPAC could help come and talk and explain why an 8-foot could be helpful, I would be more than happy. I bike on that thing, and I have, at this point, surrendered at the 90-degree turns, and I just go on the road. But I know every time I bike on it, it kind of gives, I'm going to say a social media thing, it gives me a sad. But because I know I was in a park, in like a park meeting where people were visioning what they wanted next from the parks, and that was one thing they kept talking about with Weaver Park, is they really wanted the ability to move through that park. They wanted the ability, they didn't even know that Weaver Park existed. They didn't know. They're like, my kid works out there, it'd be great if I could just go on a 1-mile walk or a 1 mile, and so it sort of was, it's a lost, it's not a totally lost opportunity, it's a 50% done opportunity, so that's all.
Well, as the person who put together the technical advisory group and the developer working group, I'm a little, I think I already mentioned it once before, chagrined that I didn't think to ask people from our Historic Preservation Committee or our Sustainability Advisory Commission or our Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Group. And I think that was probably because when I got the project, it was 90% done, and,
Well, thanks for putting this together, and thanks for taking the time
Sure.
to come talk to us. And
if you've
so
got any
this will be
other-
coming to City Council sometime in the next couple months, you think?
well, it'll be coming to Plan Commission first, and then eventually, depending on how many revisions they call for, it will come to City Council. But it'll come after both chunks have already gone through Plan Commission, because all told, there's probably 450 pages worth of ordinance.
Fun.
Yes. Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you all for your time tonight.
Thank you. Okay, Kara, update on the Urbana Park District Strategic Plan. Okay. You have to share. I can share this.
That's what I figured you were going to say, yeah.
So I passed out, I think, 6 copies of the plan document if you wanted to thumb through it while we talk. In the beginning of September, our Board of Commissioners accepted our strategic plan, which was something that I essentially sold my soul to for about 2 years because we were trying to form a new model. You know, it's like plans, plans, plans. I'm a planner. I love plans. I love documents. But how do you make something that is even remotely engaging to the average resident and actually is a document that you want to engage with and use and achieve things from? So before I dive into the plan, which is only 22 pages, I just wanted to talk about what our intentions were, and that was to make it digestible, to make it colorful, to include a lot of images, and just to make it something that we could hopefully be proud of. So I'll briefly go through a couple of the first chapters, and then I thought what may be most relevant to you all was the plan pillar, which is trails and connectivity, and that's the last pillar that I'll talk about. But I just wanted to mention that there was 977 times in which we can count that people helped this plan be a reality, and that's through our Citizen Advisory Committee, that's through around 350 people that took a survey. We had actual focus groups where people came and talked for an hour and a half to us about these things, and we're really proud of that. The first chapter, it just talks about an introduction. So why did we do it in-house? To ease the plan updates, to save on costs, to make it something that we could really be proud of, knowing what we've heard from our community and incorporating it. Our last plan was a long document with lots of jargon, and it was a little bit harder to identify with. And I think that's across the board something that we can relate to in plans we see, that you can really tell when it's been community-driven and when it's actually tailored to your community. And then we started formulating our plan pillars. So you may have heard that we have this You Belong Here initiative in which we try to engage those that are traditionally underrepresented in the Park District more. So, you know, older adults who think the Park District is only for kids playing soccer, or those who traditionally don't have the funds to participate in Park District programs or events, and just reaching more people. Another major initiative was Crystal Lake Park, and the revitalization of Crystal Lake Park. Health and wellness is another one, and then the Kickapoo Rail Trail in Weaver Park. So we had these sort of projects or big planning initiatives that already had public input, and we wanted to know how we should incorporate that into our plan. On the bottom was this image is actually 4 feet by 8 feet, and it was something that was done at a Citizen Advisory Committee in which we asked for their input regarding those 4 projects that I mentioned. We started this process in January of 2018 and met with a whole bunch of different people in the community, stakeholders including the mayor's cabinet, the Urbana Free Library, Sanitary District, county, RPC, also our Board of Commissioners, of course, the public, and so on. We had a very short demographic snapshot in which we acknowledged that there are some parts of our community that we wanted to have data for, if you would like to use the term data. So population, how many Urbana residents are foreign-born or speak other languages, and people in poverty. But during this paragraph, we also talk about the fact that these things are cool, but we care about the community overall, and we care about maybe some things that aren't necessarily quantified in census data. So, for example, offering new events or finding community champions. So there's neighborhoods in which they don't trust us or use our programs just because they don't know us, and they never have. And so how can we find that one person who's willing to advocate for us and reach out to their neighborhood? And so those sorts of things are what are more important to us than just talking about statistics overall. And then on the right-hand side of this page 7 is when we look at, you know, who actually filled out our questionnaire, those 350 people, and some of the reasons that they identified barriers to attending our Park District events, programs, classes, or facilities. So a lot of that is lack of time and the timing of events, or not just having knowledge of what's being offered. And once we have these things quantified, then we can begin to address the barriers. Chapter 4 is the plan pillars. So You Belong Here is the first pillar, which promotes creation of welcoming and supportive park and recreation experiences for everyone while encouraging an inclusive and responsive staff culture. It celebrates inclusion regardless of age, ethnicity, culture, income, ability, lifestyle interests, and everyone and anyone belongs here. So that's pillar number 1 of the 4 pillars. The next one is placemaking, which began with Crystal Lake Park and the renovations there and how we were making that a more inviting and engaging space. And the placemaking pillar features the design and creation of vibrant and engaging spaces that inspire health and recreation. Placemaking strives to incorporate universal and multi-generational design, sustainable and environmentally responsible initiatives, resilient and future-oriented plans, and safe, welcoming places with which the public participates in creating. So we have a real theme of public participation and reaching out for this plan and just as the Park District as a whole. The third pillar is health and wellness, which reinforces the Urbana Park District's commitment to providing parks, programs, facilities, and events that promote all dimensions of wellness. This includes investigation of new indoor and self-guided opportunities for all ages and abilities. And lastly, and what may be most relevant to BPAC, is trails and connectivity, highlights the establishment of multi-use paths within parks for transportation and recreation while creating park-wide, neighborhood, community, and regional connections. This supports active lifestyles and safe transportation for those walking, biking, jogging, and rolling in the community, while also stimulating local tourism and economy. So that's really the fabric of our plan. Those 4 pillars are what the plan is designed around. And the next couple pages just goes a little bit more in-depth into what each of the pillars is and how it was formed. So for You Belong Here, it talks about how we have an outreach and wellness department now, how we received funds from Carl Hospital to purchase a park van in which we just loaded up with a bunch of cool stuff and can take it to communities instead of them coming to us. We have, art supplies and soccer balls and bubbles and just fun things that we can take places in which we try to reach more people. Placemaking, as I mentioned, talked about Crystal Lake Park, but it also was where people said, I just want places to be vibrant. I want them to be welcoming. And heck, I'd really like some shade and some benches in some of these places too. Like really tangible things, but also wayfinding, for example. Like people mentioned Crystal Lake Park is really cool, but when I start walking, how do I know where I'm going? Because it's not a loop. There's a whole bunch of different ways that you could take throughout the park. Health and wellness, you'll see the wellness wheel on the upper right-hand side. So that's something that we're programming further than just how much you exercise and what you eat. There's also spiritual health, environmental, financial, emotional, a whole bunch of other dimensions of wellness. And also people mentioned it gets pretty dang cold in the winter and we don't like using the parks that much in the winter, so how can you incentivize us to get outside more or just exercise more in the winter in general? And the last pillar, trails and connectivity, mentions a lot, not only our paved paths, but also some of our soft path systems like at Meadowbrook and in Busey Woods, and the KRT and our trailhead, of course, and how we can continue to expand the KRT by any means that the Park District has, and also just share more information about it and continue moving forward. So Chapter 5, which starts on page 10 and moves to 11, begins the goals and objectives. So that's the meat of the plan. Each of the pillars has about 3 to 4 goals, and then within that you have the objectives, strategies, performance measures to know whether or not you actually achieved it, and those who are responsible staff groups. But if you would like to just skip to page 18, that's where the trails and connectivity pillar starts and those goals. And I just wanted to remind you that this is a 3 to 5 year plan, so that's why there are so few goals within each pillar. How can we actually use our resources to achieve these things while also acknowledging that if we don't, they'll roll over into the next plan. It's a very short plan, very different than something like a comprehensive plan. So goal number 1 under trails and connectivity is to evaluate Identify and advance trail projects in the UPD Trails Master Plan, which qualify for grant funding in order to expand trails within our parks. So something like the Park Street Path on the south side of Crystal Lake Park is an example of this. You know, we have our Trails Master Plan. We applied for grant funding. Carl Hospital was the match, and the end product is fabulous. So how can we continue that and really drive forward? Goal number 2 is to connect more people to nature through our parks and trails. So objective A talks about really just celebrating what we have. Do people know about a new trail we opened, or how can we get more of the Champaign County bike maps out in the community? How can we tell people that, you know, bring a friend, come here, see it, it's okay, it's a place that you can come, and then maybe they'll come back later on their own if we have an event there. The objective B is the thought of spreading the word about trails by using an interactive web map. So we have one of these for all of the sculptures and art pieces within our Urbana Park District parks and facilities. And it's something that can be used on a mobile device, so that could be another way in which we spread information about existing trails. And C is talking about soft trails. So people acknowledge that there aren't a lot of opportunities for soft trails, or what you may call hiking, within the city of Urbana. And that's something that there was actually a need for that we found out through our survey. Page 19 talks about the Kickapoo Rail Trail. Objective A, completing the Urbana Kickapoo Rail Trail Extension Study, which is funded and RPC is working on now, which assesses the feasibility of expanding through downtown Urbana and sort of beginning to put some of those pieces in place to move forward. B is to develop some stakeholders to continue moving that study forward. You know, funding or stakeholders, those that have land along the trail, things like that. It seems like an overwhelming task, so we just try to break it down into small pieces. And then C acknowledges another study in which we work to safely connect Weaver Park to the KRT. And then goal number 4, I always say, is not at all glamorous, but so important. And hopefully someone appreciates this. But it's saying we have all of these hardscapes and we need to take care of them, because it's pointless to just keep adding new things if what you already have is just in shambles. Especially because sometimes the hardscapes are the first things you see because it's how you access the park, and then it's sort of welcoming when we actually take care of things. So the objective is to maintain and preserve hardscapes in parks with an emphasis on trails and parking areas, and then we call out a number of places that we're going to look at first and pool money from our capital budget over time to begin achieving these projects. The Park Road in Crystal Lake Park is a really good example. It's a huge amount of hardscape that is hard for us to take care of with the resources we have, but if we don't break it out into pieces, then there won't be a park road. Chapter 6 gives a brief financial outlook, and so each goal is in this chart, and the goal is a summation of all the objectives that gives an estimated cost, potential source of funding, and time to completion. Just to, you know, that's always the first question. People are like, that's cool, but where are you going to get the money, or how much it's going to cost? So this just tries to break it down easily, and in the appendix there's a more detailed version of this that people can also read. Page 21 is the rest of that chart that talks about the estimated costs and funding sources. And then 7 is our implementation strategy, which talks about, you know, we have these different staff groups that were outlined in the responsible parties. We have teams from different departments across the district that are working on these things. But also we mentioned that it'll be reviewed annually in January as we start to gear up for our next year, our next fiscal year, which begins in May, and really set those goals for the next year based on this longer term plan. And you can find the plan online at urbanaparks.org/projects.
Okay, great, thanks. Any questions for Kara?
I couldn't help but notice that the biggest dollars were for the maintenance.
Mm-hmm. And people don't necessarily appreciate it because it's not something new and shiny, but
Okay, great. Thanks a lot.
I just wanted to say it's beautiful. This is beautiful. That wasn't really a question, but
thank you. I appreciate
awesome.
that.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I want
really
to
good job.
borrow some of the ideas and use them other places.
For sure.
It's one of those that it'll be fun to go back and refer to, too, because you get to look at it again. So you can keep checking up to make sure you're on task.
Yeah.
Website subcommittee, that's, we talked about this some time ago, and now the planning department has an intern that's going to be working on the website to update some things. So I was thinking we could, if we could get 2 or 3 volunteers to get together, and I think it would be kind of a 2-stage process. One would be to go through what we have now and just fix things, because there's a lot of broken links. There's a few slightly outdated, like I think the old bike maps on there, the 2015 or 16, it doesn't have the most recent bike map. There might be a couple of new, links to put in, like to the new Illinois, Bike Illinois, is that what it's called? Bike Illinois website. Maybe a couple other things. But I think kind of a first step would just be probably in one day, you could get together and go through the site and follow the links and see what works and what doesn't, and just make a list so that the person can go through and correct them. And then I think after that, meet with the staff and see how much time they have to put into it, and kind of do a more thoughtful reevaluation of the website, how people get to it, how it's organized, what sections there are, what's missing, if there's anything we want to do to reorganize it, things like that. And then probably before any major changes, you'd want to run it by BPAC again so we could discuss it. But that's kind of the idea. So are there a couple, 2 or 3 people? I don't know what's most efficient. We can have 3, but if you think, how many people would want to do it? Sue, Nancy, Annie? That's 3. Does that sound all right? Yeah, okay. So Nancy, Annie, and Sue. So I'll make a recommendation, or I guess, can I make a motion? Somebody could make a motion to appoint those 3 as a ad hoc committee to work on website updates.
I move that we be the ad hoc committee to work on the website.
Okay.
I can second that. I second that.
Okay, moved by Sue and seconded by Morgan to appoint Nancy, Annie, and Sue to the subcommittee on website.
And do we just wait for the intern to reach out to us, or what's the?
I don't have his or her email. Sam, do you know? Should we just send you or Kevin an email? And
yeah, we have an amazing intern, Sam I'm from, you've maybe seen him at the food co-op as a awesome checkout guy. He's really good at communicating, and so yeah, you can send it to me, and we'll have. Sam is taking a look at a lot of things right now with the website, but I think the first part, you're on point with identifying everything that needs to be updated, and then sitting down with Sam and planning staff and identifying how to get and access it better. Would be great.
yeah. Okay. So I think the 3, we'll leave it up to the 3 of you to get together or divide up the work, however you want to do it, to get part 1 done, to get the web links fixed and any quick updates that need to be done. We'll leave it up to you to figure out how to do that, and just expect you to have that done by next month. How's that?
It can be the month after, too, as far as Sam's schedule.
We
In case,
can
you know,
update you
in
on our
case it comes
progress
to that.
next month.
Is there a time limit how long he'll be available?
Mid-June 2020.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
But we
then
can
after that,
update you on our progress in next month.
Okay. Okay, announcements, or any other questions on the subcommittee? Okay. Announcements, I guess the big one is that Craig is leaving us, and he's been a real resource for me the last 2 years, and longer than that on council, but he's going to be hard to replace, and actually won't be replaced immediately. We won't have a transportation, well, you talk about it. Who's going to be doing your work?
Well, I have somebody here that's kind of hiding back.
Okay.
I don't know if you've noticed that. But I'll introduce Shannon Brannick. She's been with me for over a year now. She's a transportation engineer, and she'll take over BPAC for the time being until they decide how they want to do things. The plus with her is she's a bicyclist herself. So, right. So she said her hip just got replaced, but she has actually ridden to work this year. I have not, so she beats me hands down. But
you have ridden from St. Joe here before.
I have.
Yeah.
I have.
To work.
Quite a bit, but not this year. But you're in good hands with her. I want to say that I appreciate working with all you folks. One thing that's unique about all of you is that you're probably the most active commission, I think. I mean, when I look around, you almost nearly have 100% attendance, which is, you should take pride in that. The other thing, you keep us all on our toes, and that's good. I will say the community I'm going to, Bloomington, Indiana, is a multimodal community. They really pride themselves in that. They're also the only gold level bicycle-friendly community in Indiana. And they have a nice rail-to-trail conversion that runs right by City Hall, which I intend to, I will be biking there, maybe not like Sue in the winter, but I'll be, when the weather breaks better, I'll do that. And
Sounds like we may need to do a field trip or something.
Yeah, if you do come down, look me up. I do intend to use their transit system. I have an apartment there, so, and in the meantime, my family's going to stay, through the school year. And, but I do appreciate everything that you've done. I think it's very important, the work that you all do. So I would encourage you to keep doing that. So, and then one other quick announcement that's exciting is we just got the word today that the IDOT is looking to award the higher than expected bid for University Avenue. So,
so they won't put it out for rebid.
They're not going to put it out for rebid. They're recommending award, and then that would likely start probably in the spring, and then be a 2-year project. And then at the completion of it, it'll be Shannon's challenge to remind them that the speed limit should be lowered to 30, which they
agreed to verbally or in writing?
No, in writing.
We have some in writing, but you know how that goes.
Okay.
But, she'll keep on. She keeps on me, so I know she'll keep on them. So, all right.
Well, congratulations, and the mayor of Indianapolis has a polar bear ride every January that hundreds of people show up and go on. So let us know if you're going to go. We can come over and join you. I think that's a very cool event. I'd love to have us do something similar here. And they really do have great trails over there. I think it's a very exciting place for you to go. And
one of my favorite movies is Breaking Away. I don't know if you've all
yes,
seen it.
yes, it's a very fun movie.
Yeah, it was, and I remember that as a kid. So,
yeah, when is the little 500? Is that
I think it's in the spring.
Yeah,
and I plan to check that out.
All right.
Start training.
When you reach 50, you kind of, I don't know.
We'll get you a broken fixie at the bike project.
One thing that was interesting when I visited, though, they used to have dockless bikes. Then the dockless scooter company came in, and then the dockless bikes all left. They split. So when I was scouting out, I had to rent a bike from a bike shop, and I rode around town. But I eyed the scooters, but at 50, I'm going, I don't, I mean, you fall once, and then it's like, you're going to feel it. I don't want to feel it. But boy, you get to campus, and they're everywhere. And then there were parents that were riding them in the parking lots and with their kids and on the weekends. But as you got away from campus, you didn't see the activity that we have here with the dockless bikes.
Right.
But I thought that was interesting. They basically left town.
Yeah,
So
that's happened other places.
has it? Yeah. So I think we're very fortunate that we have Veal right here. So you all take care.
Craig, you will be missed. You've done. I've known you for. I feel like I've known you about 20 years. We've worked together for over 10, and I mean, you keep us moving, you keep us going, and you keep us. What's the right word? Sane. Grounded in what's possible, and at the same time, while you're telling us, well, there's these restrictions sometimes, but you're always finding the way that we can still get it done, and you've made a huge difference here. We're really going to miss you.
Okay, any other announcements? Yeah, Morgan.
Thursday, the Champaign County Sustainability Network, in a partnership with the city and the Midwest Grows Green, is doing a lunch and learn here at the city building, so noon this Thursday, explaining how you can use compost top dressing to reduce pesticides on lawns, which is really good in all kinds of different ways for our community. And they also have a follow-up green drinks at the Broadway Food Hall with a panel discussion from people explaining how you don't have to spray your whole yard in order to keep it nice and beautiful and enjoyable. So I encourage people to join that.
Okay, thanks. Thursday.
I have a quick announcement, since I just realized this will happen before our next meeting. I'm teaching a land use planning workshop at the University of Illinois in the planning program, and our project that we're working on is a land use plan for the Kickapoo Trail extension. And I've arranged, I believe it will be Monday, November 11th. We will have an open house so people can take a look at the students' proposed concepts and give them some input. We'll be having that, I think, at 25 o'clock Brewery, which is right on the Boneyard and across from where the trail would be. And I want to especially thank them for being willing to open up and do that. I need to confirm that with him. But I'll try and send an email invitation so that you all can come. And I'm hoping some of the city council members might be able to come if they don't have
Probably not on a Monday. What time is it?
5:30. We'll do it at
okay.
5:30. If you all don't have a study session or something, you might be able to stop by for a few minutes and give them some input. And it's sort of unusual. I haven't really been able to find a land use plan for a trail. So they're doing something a bit unique here that I hope will be really useful for the city as we work on the trail.
Great.
And then Thursday night, there will be a group of folks meeting in the co-op parking lot. And there's going to be a witches ride. And we're going to ride out to Riggs Brewery. So have some brews. And there is a beautiful full moon, so it ought to be delightful. There will be spooky music, brooms, zip-tied to bikes. It's going to be a blast.
Ride safely.
Right.
Any other announcements? Okay. For future topics, I think we can cross a couple off. The subdivision development requirements, I think we've taken care of. That was C. And the webpage content. We have subcommittee. We can take that off for now. They may come on with a report next month.
Would IDOT be able to present about University Avenue?
And that's all pretty much done. Yeah, we've had presentations on that, and there's really no changes now. Yeah.
I think it would be difficult to get them here, but maybe how about this, Amy? We could discuss on whether or not staff could do a cursory presentation of the plans.
Just can't go over,
Like
yeah.
Bill said,
what
they're
to
not really up
expect.
for review, but it could be where they're at least noted what they're planning to do.
I mean, that would be great, because I know when I met with them, they were going to put in these blinky yellow turn signals, which I have used in Wisconsin, and I know many people that have gotten in accidents from them, so I know they're going to probably put them in no matter what, but at least it would be nice to just see some stuff. It would be nice to see the plan. It's going right through the middle of my city. I would just like to know what's happening.
Yeah.
That's
There
all.
will be flashing yellow arrows as part of their plan. One of the issues for Urbana is whether or not that continues within the city. So, and there's a cost associated with that, obviously. But you could, you'll learn about where they plan to widen the sidewalk and what they plan on able to do at the intersection. And hey, since I'm leaving, I think Shannon could do a great job on that.
Already piling work on Shannon.
Or Lily. So maybe, I don't know, maybe, we can discuss it. If they don't have time, maybe they can't do it, but, yeah.
Okay, and I think the bike share guy said he would be able to come next month, so that would probably be next month. The one thing I was thinking about, maybe we should add for a future topic would be a discussion on enforcement. Maybe get somebody from the police department to explain how they go about ticketing for vehicle violations in bicycle lanes and for bicycle violations, and when there's an accident, how they decide who gets a ticket. Some things like that have come up in our discussions of the past few months. Does that sound like something that people would want to have questions about? Okay, or encouragement, if you want to encourage the officers to do more or whatever, or ideas of ways they could enforce
There's a planning class at the university that is doing an observational study on Lincoln of compliance with and behavior of motorists, pedestrians, and bicyclists on Lincoln Avenue and on Green. And we might be able to get them to come and share what they find. They're going to put all that data together and share it with us. I think that'll be very interesting.
Okay. So let's just put a general topic, enforcement, on there for now. Any other future topics people want to add? Okay. Any last words? Yeah, Craig?
Yeah, so I guess on the future topics, just to help Shannon and Tamara here, are we looking at the next meeting to be an update on the bike share program? Is
Right.
that, and would that be Morgan or somebody else?
So I would definitely be willing to do it. I mean, Lily is also on the sort of
Okay.
bike sharing contact list, but the core thing here I was thinking is Ben Thomas is the general manager for VO Ride, and he's available to come. So why don't we have him come and share a status update with BPAC, and then we can just ask questions as opposed to either of us presenting something in particular, because he's willing and able
Okay,
and available.
okay.
Did you send him the date? He asked for the date. Okay, yeah.
And then you would have the website subcommittee, so far those two, and then ask about enforcement. Is that what you want to do, or is that just a future
so
topic?
it depends what else. So I was going to put it on future topics, but if
Okay, we can leave that on future, so we have 2 items. What about Urbana bike racks from Annie? Would you be ready to
yeah,
present?
Annie, did you still have something to add on that?
Do you want to wait on that a little bit? Sounds like she does want to wait.
I'd rather see the IDOT plan if that's possible.
Okay, so we'll add the IDOT plan. Okay, so the University Avenue plan by staff. So that's 3 items. 3 to 4 is what we usually do. Like to start doing this, probably it helps Bill and I and Tamara, because otherwise,
2 days before the
Right.
deadline to
Right.
get the agenda out, we're
Right.
scrambling to see who's available. And
right.
Okay,
Yeah. So we got 3 topics then. Okay, thank you.
thank you. Thank you all very much. This meeting is adjourned.